let me turn to the correspondence that I've received from lots of men. And I've distilled some of that correspondence into just a few questions and the tips from me that follow from them. The first revolves around the notion of bravery. Well, bravery is a concept that for many men back in the day was pretty well known. Most men at least aspired to lead a courageous life, or at the very least most men understood that one of the biggest differentiators between ordinary men and extraordinary men was that the latter displayed some form of courage. Now, as I'm sure you know, there are actually at least two broad categories of courage, and the first is the one that we usually think of when we think of courage or bravery, and that's physical courage. One of the many things that I've done in my life is work as a professional mountain climbing guide. I've climbed all over the world. I've been involved in rescues. I've climbed in the Himalayas, some of the highest peaks in the world. I've almost died myself in the mountains. And in the course of doing that work, I've seen many displays of both cowardice on the one hand and physical bravery on the other. Another great example would be to hark back to those dark hours on September 11th, 2001, when New York City firefighters and policemen rushed into burning and soon tottering and collapsing buildings, knowing as they did so their lives were at risk. No one put a gun to their head and forced them to do this. Their behavior is obviously a collective example of physical courage. But the courage that I really want to talk with you about today isn't that kind of courage at all. Instead, it's the sort of inner courage, the ability to face our inner demons that so many men seem to grapple with. Mark Twain once pointed out, and I think very pithily, that in fact courage is resistance to fear. He suggested that if you would show him a man who showed no fear in the face of danger, he would show you an idiot. And I think Mark Twain, as with so many of his commentaries, hit it right on the nail. The essence of courage is not the avoidance of fear, which is in fact impossible, but instead the facing up to fear. And most of us are not professional mountain guides. Most of you watching this right now are probably not in the active military, and even if you are, most of you are probably not, at least right now, in the line of fire. Most of you who are watching this are not policemen or firemen, and therefore facing the kinds of physical dangers that men with those kinds of jobs do face on a regular basis. But all of you are alive, I hope. Which means that each one of you faces on a daily basis a whole range of fears, from I'm afraid that if I speak up in this meeting my boss is going to kick my butt right out of the room, to I wish I could tell my wife I don't love her anymore and leave. I could go on, fill in the blanks. Those are the kinds of things that men face on a daily basis and largely fail to face up to. The result of that is that they lead unhappy lives. And as you'll hear later, I'm going to suggest that that's the biggest no-no there is. So my first tip to you is to stop blaming your circumstances on the shortcomings you see in your lives. In fact, as George Bernard Shaw once suggested, there's no such thing as circumstances. Successful people, people who are happy, people who are wealthy, people who are content, people who truly make a difference in the world around them and in their own lives first, tend to be men who understand that they shape the world around them. They shape their own lives. It harks back to my very first tip. Only you can change your life. Well, in order to do that, You have to have the courage of your convictions. You have to understand that there are no circumstances, there are only situations that you shape yourself. You simply need to muster the courage to do so.